right now. One being, you are a complaining type who always thinks nothing good ever happens to them. And number 10 being, I literally cannot stop smiling because I'm so thankful. Like, where do you rate right now on that scale? Yeah, I forgot 10. Just imagine 10. 10 is the extreme, right? 10 is, I know. I finished making that. I was like, I got no 10. All right, we'll just stop at 9 then. Yeah, right? Where do you rank? Where do you rank on that? Don't share it. I just want you to think about it. How many of you guys would say you are 5 and over? Right? How many of you guys would say you're 4 and under? Okay, well, we're going to put that to test tonight. We're going to put that to test tonight. Tonight, we're going to conclude this 4-part message series titled, seriously, Just Do Something. And we're going to talk about this whole idea of being thankful, which, once again, it's a weird thing to talk about because when you think about God's will for your lives, thankfulness is usually not the first thing that comes up on that list. But this might come as a little bit of a surprise to some of you, but here it is. That being thankful, please listen to this. This is important for you to grasp it because this is what's at the heart of tonight's message. Being thankful and having a thankful attitude is an act of worship that honors God. When you and I think about worship, we think about what Andrew and Samantha and Jesse just did, right? We think of worship in terms of singing to God, but the fact is, anytime you do what God created you to do, you are you're worshiping God. But even more specifically, Psalm 50, verse 23 says this. It says, but giving thanks, here it is. This is God speaking, by the way. But giving thanks is a sacrifice. Read it with me. That what? God says your ability to be thankful in all circumstances, and we'll get to that passage in 1 Thessalonians 5:18 a little later on, but your ability to be thankful is an act of worship that God says honors me. You want to know what pleases God? You want to know what makes God smile on your life and God say, yes, I delight in you. Yes, I find great joy. God says, when you're thankful, then it honors me. You know what it means to honor someone? To put them above, to say that they are worthy of certain things in your life. If you keep my path, I will reveal to you the salvation of God. Thankfulness and obedience is an incredible, incredible act. So here it is. If you want to find out God's will for your life, start by being thankful for what's already in your life. In fact, in tonight's message, I'm going to walk you through 3 different areas where you need to be thankful. First of all, I'm going to talk to us about being thankful for all God has done in your life. So think past, right? All the things that God has done in your life in the past leading up to this moment. We're going to talk about all the things that God is currently doing in your life in this season. And then we're going to talk about all the things that you're trusting God to do. You want to be thankful for what God has done, what God is doing, and what God's going to do in the future. And I'll walk you through that. So let's do it right now. Let's start by talking about being thankful for what God has done. And let me start that with a question. So I want you to go back down memory lane of your life. Go back memory lane as far back as you can remember, perhaps maybe since you came to faith in Jesus Christ. All right, let's start there. Go back to from the time you put your faith in Jesus Christ and answer this question. What are some big prayers? And when I say big prayers, what are some big things you trusted God for from then till now that you sought God for in prayer, and here it is, and received? Are you thinking about those things now? What are some things you sought God for in prayer over the last few years since you came to faith in Jesus Christ and actually received? What are those things? Can you recall any of them? How many of you guys have it? How many of you guys don't have it? Okay, all of you have it. Good. Let me ask you another question, if you'll allow me to probe a little further. For those prayers that you desperately sought God after, or you sought God for, and received a response, how did you respond in gratitude to God when you received it? Did you simply give God a shout out and just moved on because you like to keep the past in the past? Did you even give God thanks for it at all? Did you have can you recall you perhaps on your knees, perhaps in church saying, God, you know what? I just want to say thank you for answering this prayer that I've been praying. Or let me help you out a little bit. If you recall those moments, and whenever those moments replay in your mind today, are you still overcome with a sense of gratitude, or are you so desperately in need of something new that you don't even recall the good things God has done? In the Old Testament, a young shepherd boy named David, who later became king of Israel, second king of Israel, he writes this about, and I love this, he writes this passage about recalling God's past faithfulness. Let me read it to you. You might have heard it before. He says, and I love this passage. You got to picture David writing this. He says, bless the Lord, oh my soul. Like he's saying, soul, like bless the Lord, soul. He's speaking to himself. He's preaching to thyself. He says, bless the Lord, O my soul. Let all that is within me bless his holy name. And I love this part. And say it with me. Go ahead. And forget not all his benefits. You guys can't really see that. All right, sorry about that. Bless the Lord, O my soul. Let all that is within me bless his holy name. And forget not all his benefits. And he lists the things that God has done that you should not forget. The God who forgives your iniquity, your sin. The God who heals your diseases. The God who gives you health and life. The God who redeems your life from the pit. Who saves you from dying on a daily basis. The God who crowns your head with steadfast love and mercy. In other words, his love is over you. We sang about that a little bit ago, how he loves us. The God who satisfies you with good so that your youth is renewed like the eagle. So let me ask that question again. Can you recall God's past faithfulness in your life and retell that story with a sense of awe, a sense of gratitude? If someone asks you to say, what are some good things God has done in your life? Do you tell that story and say, I can't wait to tell you God's goodness to me, or have you forgotten all his benefits? Hey, I'm not trying to rip on you tonight. I'm simply just trying to make a point that sometimes you and I need to seriously pause and take a moment from all our requests and all our petitions and all the things we're asking God to do and thank God for what he has done. You and I appreciate that when people do it, don't we? Someone sends you a card out of random just to say, hey, listen, I just want you to know a year and a half ago, you called me up in the middle of this, and I just want to say thank you. That can sometimes be more meaningful than someone just thanking you for something you did for them right there, can't it? The fact that they remembered it. And God says, those who offer a thanks offering, get this, honor me. If you want to please God and you want to do God's will, start by being thankful for what he's done. You know, in the Old Testament, God had an interesting exercise that he put the Israelites through in order for them to remember what God has done. In the Old Testament, whenever God did something mighty among the Israelites, or in an individual's life, they were instructed as a result of what God had done to build a monument or a memorial in remembrance of what God did. Sometimes, in fact, those monuments would be named with a name that correlates with whatever it is that God did. So, for instance, in Genesis chapter 32, verse 22 to 32, you got to write that down because there's an awesome story there. Genesis 32, verse 22 to 32. 32, 22 to 32. Genesis 32, 22 to 32. And in that account, there's a man named Jacob who got in a wrestling match with a guy sometime around midnight. Doesn't even tell us who the guy is. He just gets in a wrestling match. And he wrestles this guy literally all night till sometime around dawn, only to find out at the end of the fight that the man he just wrestled was God himself. Incredible story. Jacob was so impacted, literally, like he actually came out of it with a limp. Go figure, you wrestle God, you ain't going to come out alive, right? He comes out of it with a limp. And in fact, in that account, it says that he wrestled with a stranger for so long, and when he realized he was God, he refused to let him go until God blessed him. And really, it's in that account that Jacob's name gets changed to Israel. And Jacob, after this incredible encounter, he calls that place where the wrestling match took place Peniel, Peniel. as a memorial to the fact that he saw God face to face, wrestled with God, and survived. There's another account, 1 Samuel chapter 7, verse 12, where God had worked in the life of the Israelites. And the prophet Samuel does this incredible act. He builds a rock, a giant stone, a monument, and he calls that stone, after God had done some incredible things among the Israelites, he had helped them fight against the enemy called the Philistines. And after he was done, Samuel built this monument, and he called it, you know the name? Ebenezer. And an Ebenezer literally means a stone of remembrance. And I love what he says. He says, I'm building this here as a memory of the fact that God has brought me this far. And I love that. I love that picture. To say that, hey, listen, God is going to take me much further. I'm believing him. But in my life, God has brought me this far, and I want to remember that. And here's why God had them build memorials. It wasn't just about the people whom he rescued. It was about future generations. You see, when God did something mighty among the people, he had them build a monument so that when generations later on walked by this giant rock and they looked at it and they would ask, Dad, what does this giant rock mean? Why is it here? What's it doing here? So that those people who were there would now turn to the children and tell them to say, hey, listen, this is what God did in our lives. And this is what God did in our lives. This stone is a physical reminder of what God did in our lives. And so when when these older people tell the younger people the story about this stone, it would stir up a greater faith in God, because they're like, every time they go to school and they walk by that rock, Ebenezer, reminds me of how faithful God has been. Every time they're going to the store and they walk by that rock, they would think, that stone reminds me of what God has done. It served as a reminder of what God had done. How well do you remember what God has done in your life? Now, today, we don't build stone, right? We don't build stone monuments. I mean, we have some historic sites, but we don't individually like, hey, God blessed me with a new car. I'm going to build a rock in my backyard, right? We don't do that today. And we don't do that. In fact, I would say our memorials today look a little different. We've moved from building giant towering monuments to communicating those same messages through digital media, right? Let me explain what I mean. When God does something awesome in your life, something super exciting in your life, let's be honest, what's the first thing most of us do? Tweet it. Instagram, right? Facebook post. Hashtag awesome Jesus, right? Hashtag my God is faithful. Hashtag thanks God, right? Like, what is the first thing we do when God does something exciting in our lives today? We post it online. We live in a digital age. We tweet about it on Facebook. In fact, according to some folks today in modern day age, your relationship with your new boyfriend or girlfriend is not official until you post it online, right? Until you move from it's complicated to we're in a relationship, right? All right, Kristen and Thomas, right? Yeah. We're eating dinner last night, and I think my wife was done, and she's in the kitchen. She's like, what? I'm like, honey, what happened? She's like, Tom and Kristen are dating. I'm like, what? I threw my chicken bone down. I rushed to the kitchen. I'm like, what? I should know these things, right? Congratulations.
That goes on Facebook, just like mine did.
Social media has, in some sense, become our modern day memorial, hasn't it?
You can
Right?
make a life event, a big one, if it's good.
Yeah, right. Social media today is where we tell our stories of what God has done, isn't it? Now, here's what I know to be true. That might be cool and that's exciting. That Instagram, Facebook, whatever. You got all social media platforms. That may be cool and that might be exciting. But here's what I know. There is a downside. There's a downside to this mass migration of communication to the digital world. And what I mean by that is the pace at which news feeds travel online today is so fast that some of our God moments are too quickly and too easily forgotten. Here's what I mean. A select few tweets or a post or whatever you put online, a select few will go viral pretty quickly, right? You're going to post a picture of something God did, and it's going to create some buzz, and like 72 of your friends will like it. Or perhaps you share a video of something you did, or a photo of something you did, and a bunch of friends, and a select few will go viral, right? Some of you have experienced that, right? Like 20 people like it. That's awesome, right? But here's the deal. For most posts that you put up, within a few hours of putting that post up, it becomes old news. Ever had that? It doesn't matter if you posted or tweeted that you got a new job, a new car, a new shiny boyfriend, or that you recently passed the biggest exam of your life. Sometimes no one likes it, no one shares it, no one reposts it because they've moved on to the more recent status updates. Now here's why that's a little bit of a problem in this digital age. It's a little bit of a problem because everyone moves so quickly to the next exciting status update. Unfortunately, those of you who put those posts about what God hath done, those of you who put it up and your posts get no likes, no reposts, no shares, you might sometimes start to get sad and start to question how the bigness of what God has done in your life is sometimes loses its bigness because no one likes it, no one shares it, and no one reposts it. It results then in some of us becoming ungrateful, not as thankful as we would be if we got 100 likes. Are you with me so far? I mean, if I were preaching this Sunday morning, I probably would stick with a stone illustration, but I'm speaking to a generation that primarily lives online, with a few exceptions. So, here's a challenge for you, and I'm going to speak to you all, and I'm going to speak to those of you who are not online, but I'm going to speak to those of us who tell our stories online. How about that? Who tell your stories online, because that's what you do. When you put a status and you say, hey, I'm about to go in for a job interview right now, pray for me, you're telling your story online, which is totally okay. But let me give you a challenge or really a practical way to be thankful with your memorial. So here it is. Here's the challenge. You ready for this? Here's an exercise. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick a day. And on that day, I want you to allot 15 to 20 minutes just to you. And here's what I want you to open your Facebook account or your Twitter account. And I want you to scroll through all your photos and all your videos and all your statuses since you joined Facebook.
That's going to take more than 20 minutes.
I want you to scroll through your photos, your videos, and your post since you joined Facebook. And I want you to look for the videos and the statuses and the photos that marked a turning point in your life when God did something great. Just go through it. You're going to find all kinds of weird posts that you put back when you were complaining about this person or that thing. You're going to find all kinds of things that you were like, really, I put that up? But then you're going to come across a few of them that you're going to go, wow, I do remember what God has done. And here's what I want you to do. Every time you scroll through your Facebook account, as far back as you go, when you get to a moment where you come across a story that you put up about what God had done, I want you to take a moment and I want you to pray there on your computer. And I want you to thank God for it. That is your Ebenezer. Are you with me? That is your monument. And you say, God, this far you've taken me. In fact, when you're praying about it, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about the prayers you were praying leading up to that moment. And I want you to say, God, I remember the struggle I went through before I received this thing I put on Facebook. And I just want to say thank you. And then you move on to that. And you go through your Facebook. Take as long as you need. All right, 15, 20 minutes is short. Take as long as you need. I was going through my account, and I found I found a bunch of them, but I want to highlight two posts that really stuck out for me. The first one is actually 2012 last year. It was October and Hurricane Sandy. And you can't really read that post, but Hurricane Sandy hit us, and we had no light. You know, we're in Netcon. We think it's going to come back in 15 minutes. And how many of you remember how cold it was that first night, right? It was freezing, right? And my wife and I had been in the house the whole day. We got a little, I think it was 20 months or 19 months old at the time. And, we hadn't bundled with everything in the house. The next morning, no lights. The next day, 2 days we're in the house. There's no light. Nathaniel, he's managing. Like, it was so funny. We just went into our room. We put blankets under all the doors. We lit candles. And we're just sitting there. And, You know, we still had some decent food, and I remember me sitting there thinking, God, I need to provide for my family somehow. I didn't have enough cash to go buy a generator. Not that if I did, I would find one anyway, because generators went like in a heartbeat. And I remember being in that room that night, and as a husband, man, that was a great burden. And I thought, I got to provide for my family. My wife is cold. I'm freezing. I can handle it. My little boy's cold. The next morning, I get up early, and I go to Panera Bread, and Panera has a long line, and I buy him warm soup and warm bread. I bring it home, and I'm still thinking, this light has not come on. We need to do something. And then Mama Bates, Lisa, that afternoon comes over to our house with like her trunk full of bottled water and stoves, and she brought all kinds of things for us. And we're in the kitchen, and we're trying to figure out how to light the stove. And this stove, we tried everything. I went to my neighbor. I'm like, dude, we just got this portable stove. We don't know how to do it. He built me a new leg. We tried everything, and it wouldn't work. And finally, I think it did work, and we bought some water. And in the conversation, I remember Mama saying, would you guys just come stay with us? And my wife and I were like, oh, we don't want to, you know how you feel when you don't want to burden anyone? Anyway, we went over to Mama saying, oh, we'll just be there for a few days, maybe a day coming. Well, we were at Mama's house for almost 2 weeks. And Mama took us in like family. And you know, for that, I'm grateful. I really am, Mama. Mama has been, thank God for you. And I put up the status. I said, heat, electricity, warm food. The simple things. Still no power, but the awesome Mama Bates took us in. Never have I been so happy to heat up a Hot Pocket. It's the best Hot Pocket ever. To those of you who tried calling us, sorry, we lost phone service too, but we're all good now. Boy, and these are the kind of statuses I'm telling you to look through your Facebook and just say, thank you, God. Do you have those statuses on your Facebook? Go back through it and thank you, God. Here's another one. This is a photo in January 2008. This, by the way, is when I first met my wife. Yeah, this was in Nigeria at a leadership conference. One of my professors in seminary had invited me to go to Nigeria with him to go host a leadership conference. And while I was there doing the work of the Lord, my wife walks in. And I've always joked about this. Prior to meeting my wife, I would preach that I don't believe in finding the one. I think you meet someone, you work on your relationship, you grow in love with each other, and she becomes the one. Well, God has a sense of humor, because I kid you not, the first day I saw my wife, I called my mom, and I'm like, I have found my wife. She thought I was a stalker, but I convinced her otherwise, all right? But this was the last day before I left. And, you know, that night, I'm like, I am leaving Nigeria, and I might never see this girl again. So I'm just going to put everything on the table. And I just called her, and it was the most nervous things. And our team members were with us, and they were taking pictures of us. They were they were literally hiding in corners, taking photos of us. And one of my friends jokes about Jennifer McVeigh. He says, shaken with Dupe, romance blossoming right before our eyes, proving cross-continental relationships can work. And when I look at this photo, I think about how many years I spent asking God for a wife. And how many years I said, God, I'm in ministry, so I can't just really date like that, because people are kind of watching my life. And I need you to help me out here. And I waited for a long time. I had many nights when I cried. And I'm like, God, how come it is everyone around me is dating and getting married, and I'm still single? In fact, at some point, I started questioning God. I told God, I said, Lord, I love you more than some of these folks who are getting married. And in God's perfect timing, I met her. So I scroll back through my Facebook, and I find this story, and I pause, and I say, God, thank you for the many years that you kept me from getting in wrong relationships. There are few girls that I dated that, honestly, I don't think I was the right guy for them. That's a nice way of saying they weren't the right one for me, but I was not in a healthy place emotionally to be in a relationship. And when I met my wife, I wasn't the best, but man, I was in a better place. Hey, listen, I don't want to drag this any further than I should. You get my point? Scroll through your social media accounts, right? We don't have rocks today, but you have your social. Look for those statuses, and thank God for it. Be thankful for what God has done. Okay, let me speak to those of you who haven't bought into the mob mentality and have chosen not to own your own account on any social media platform. Kyle, right? All right, let's talk to you guys. The same principle still applies, though. The same principle still, fine, you don't have a Facebook account, you don't have a social media account. Do you have some sort of outlet where you tell your story? Do you have a friend that you chat with regularly to talk about what God has done? Do you journal? Where do you tell your story? Wherever it is, find those places and think back through what God has done. If it's an individual, talk with them and have them kind of walk you through, what are some things you've seen God do in my life? The goal is, remember what God has done. All right, let's move to the next one. Not only be thankful for what God, you honor God not only by being thankful for what he has done, but you honor God for being thankful, or by being thankful for what God is doing in your life now. Now let me just say this up front. I think it's hard to be thankful for what God is doing in our lives now because you don't see the full picture. Some of you are praying, you're seeking God for some very specific things, and you're just not even seeing nothing coming together. And it's hard to be thankful because you don't see the full picture, right? But here it is. Here's a statement you should remember. Are you ready for this? It's good. The key to having a thankful attitude is not only being thankful when you receive what you need, but maintaining a thankful spirit towards the God who supplies those needs. I'll say it again. The key to having a thankful attitude is not only being thankful when you receive what you need, which is easy, right? You get what you need, you say thank you. The key to having a thankful attitude is not only being thankful when you receive what you need, but maintaining a thankful spirit towards the God who supplies those needs. And that's how you can be thankful about what God is doing now. It's not just about what you get, it's about God himself. I love Psalm 100, verse 4 and 5. Every worship leader loves this one. Andrew, I'm sure you've heard this one before. Yes. The psalmist says that this is the kind of attitude that you should use to approach God, and I love this. He says, enter his gates with what? Thanksgiving. And his courts with what? Praise. Give what to him? And what? Praise. For the Lord is what? Awesome. And his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. Did you catch that? God says the right kind of attitude with which to approach me in worship, in prayer, is what? A thankful attitude. Which means that when we come to God, he says, don't come with a grumbling spirit. Do you sometimes have a hard day before church? Absolutely. Do you sometimes have a really terrible day before prayer? Absolutely. But God says, when you come into my courts, which basically means when you come to me in prayer, God says you come with a thanksgiving and praise. And some of you might be missing out on some of God's glory and blessings in your life because you're not coming thankful. God says you honor me when you thank me. And so here's God's will for your life. You want to do right by God? Do things that please him. Come with thanksgiving. Come with praise. Man, I wish I had thought about this early. We would have had some turkey here tonight if I knew early enough that we were doing this, right? Come with thanksgiving. Come with praise. Now, there's a slight possibility that some of you hearing this message right now are thinking to yourself, whether here or online, some of you are thinking to yourself, man, Shags, I hear what you're saying, but dude, you have no idea how my week has been. I'm struggling right now. Kristen, cue it up, please. I'm struggling right now, and you're thinking to yourself, I can't think of a single thing to be thankful about. Really? Let me help you a little bit with that. Let me put some things in perspective. I'm going to ask you guys a few questions, and I want you to respond. If it's true of you, just raise your hands up. If it's not, leave your hands. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and there are going to be images correlating with the question. So here's a question. How many of you had 2 full meals yesterday, at least 2 full meals at some point yesterday? Okay. Maybe lunch and breakfast, maybe lunch and dinner. 2 full meals. Okay, cool. Put your hands down. How many of you slept in a warm bed last night with a blanket over you? Raise your hands. Okay. How many of you had the options of at least 5 different outfits from which to pick what you wore to remix tonight? You looked in your closet and you had at least 5 outfits from which to pick from. Okay. I'm not talking about clean clothes. I'm talking about what's in your closet. Okay. How many of you drove your own car here tonight? Okay. You put your hands down. How many of you will go home tonight and pick from your fridge any choice of drink you want, including water? Okay. So I think consistently. Okay. Are you aware that if you raised your hands to 3 or more of these questions, you rank in the top 35% of wealthiest people on this planet right now? Okay, I just made it 35% up, but I'm almost certain it's true. Let me say this about that number. I joke about it, but I've had the privilege being on missions. I've had the privilege to travel around the world. I grew up in Nigeria, been in some other African nations. And though I made that number up, I have been to a good part of the world. And the conditions of many people around the world, or let me put it this way, you are living a significantly higher quality of life than a good percentage of the world. I don't know what that figure is. I actually tried looking for this number online. I couldn't find it. That's why I made that number up. But it sounded close. Even in the United States, the fact that you could drive here tonight, right? I know we like to describe ourselves as the 99%. In fact, here's the truth of the matter. If you live in the United States and you answered 3 or more of those questions, you are the 1%. Did that make sense? Right? 99% are kind of the ones who are suffering, and the 1% make all the money, right? You are within that top percentile of wealthiest people in the world if you answered 3 or more. We don't know the figure exactly. And I emphasize that not to make anyone feel guilty, and I'm sorry I probably stole your thunder for those of you guys who thought the 35% number, but I was just trying to make a point. And the point is this: you have a lot more to be thankful for than a good number of people in this world. If God never gave you anything else, you still have a lot more to be thankful than a good percentage of people around the world right now. So on your way home tonight, after Remix, thank God for what He's doing now. Thank Him that you can breathe without any medical instruments. I love that picture in the video where the guy's eating dinner and the picture comes up and says, you don't have to worry about safety. And we're not talking about safety about a burglar coming to your house. I'm talking about men marching in with guns into your house simply because you're watching TV or because you're a believer. You have safety. July 4th is coming. You're going to get together with some friends and perhaps family. And they're going to barbecue and you're going to eat, and you have the freedom to gather like that. Listen, if there is one will of God for your life that is clearly stated in the scriptures, it is being thankful. And here it is. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18 says this: be thankful when? In all circumstances. When there's plenty, when there's little. Not for the circumstances, but in it. For this is God's will for those of you who belong to Jesus Christ. You honor God when you're thankful for what God is doing. And thirdly, thank God for what He is going to do. And this one is a lot harder because you're thanking God for what you've not yet acquired. That is a weird thing that I confess. I've tried talking about it in the Western mindset, and it's hard because it requires a great amount of faith. You want to be thankful not only for what God has done, what He's doing, but what you're believing by faith He's going to do. By the way, do you know where the ability to thank God in advance for what He's going to do comes from? It comes from having an attitude that's already used to thanking God for what He has done and for what He's doing. Your ability to thank God for what's yet to come comes from your ability to just rest in the fact that He's provided for you thus far. You're Ebenezer. This far God has taken me. And by faith, you believe that He's going to take you even further. In fact, let me venture to say that if you're struggling to trust God with something in your life right now, how many of you guys would say you're struggling to trust God? Don't raise your hands. Don't raise your hands. How many of you would say you're struggling in your life right now to trust God for some things? if that's true of you, I would venture to say that it is a result. It's potentially a result of not being thankful for what he's already done and is currently doing. Hence, you're unable to see him do anything in the future. Like if you're thankful and you recall to mind God's past faithfulness, that's where faith comes from. Because when you look over your life and you say, when I was in a pit and when I was struggling and when I was in great need and I called on God and he met me. And when I'm and you're able to call those stories, that feeds your faith. That's why I have you walking through your Facebook social media accounts to track down what God has done. That's where faith comes from. It's not just a fun exercise. It feeds your faith. So, let's assume that all of you are thankful for what God has already done in your life. And you're thankful for what God is doing. The question is, how do you thank God for what he's going to do? So let me walk you through that practically, because I can tell you to do that, but I can tell you how to do that. By the way, here's where a little bit of planning comes in. Remember, this whole series is what? It's about just doing something. Stop dreaming about your dreams and start doing something about it. So, do you know what the key is to praying bold prayers of faith? This is good. The key to praying bold prayers of faith, you know what it is? It is being specific in your prayer. You want to pray big prayers of faith? Be specific. Coming to God, let me give you an example. Coming to God and humbly stating a detailed plan of how you're trusting him to move in your life, family, or city requires a lot more faith than just asking God to provide you, protect you, and be with you. Like being specific when you pray helps you visualize God meeting the need you've laid before him, which actually increases your need. So in other words, instead of coming to God and saying, Lord, I want to thank you for your blessing over my life and watching over me and guiding me and protecting and providing for me. It takes more faith and probably honors God more, and it's more bold because without faith, it's impossible to please God. It takes more faith to come to God rather than saying, God, I thank you so much for what you're going to provide for me. It takes more faith to say, God, you've built me with a mind that understands numbers and signs, whatever, right? And there's an opportunity with Apple to be a programmer with one of them. The job pays $65K a year, and it would require me to move to California. God, I'm going to thank you for your faithfulness and your ability to provide this opportunity for me. I want to thank you for it because I know you're a faithful God. It takes more faith to pray that kind of prayer than simply to say, God, provide me with a job. Now, let me be clear on this. When you pray by faith, you're not obligating God to do things for you. You're simply demonstrating that, God, I believe that you're a faithful God. And I believe that you're so great that I'm going to name specifically what I'm believing you for. Whether God does it or he doesn't do it is not your business. He's simply saying, trust me. And here's the beauty of God. So maybe God doesn't exactly give you that job at Apple. But here's how big God is. God is big enough that he's able to redirect your prayer to reflect more of what he wants for you. And that's where faith starts. So instead of giving God generic praise and thanks, as in when we say, God, we just want to thank you for hearing us and meeting our needs, you can instead humbly state before God, line by line, the things you are believing and trusting him for. And boy, man, that takes faith. So let me actually back up and give you the command. When you're praying, be specific. Be specific. And when you pray those things and you ask God for them, always end your prayers by saying, God, I thank you because I know you're a faithful God to me. You've heard my prayers, and I know you will meet my needs. And I thank you, God, that I know you're wise enough to direct my prayers in a direction that honors you. Are you with me so far? Right? You're not trying to manipulate God to do exactly what you want. But when you're specific and you're thanking him in advance, you're leaving it open to say, hey, you're God. You can do whatever you want, but I'm going to thank you for this. So here's the deal. Praying in this manner can have a dramatic effect on answered prayer in your life because here it is. Bold prayers of faith honors God, and God honors bold prayers of faith. You want to do something big and bold? Be specific in your prayer. And watch God meet those, right? Because when you're specific in your prayer and God meets your needs, it's a greater excitement, isn't it? If I ask God to bless me, and I were to be offered a job that pays more, which would meet my needs, that's great, and I would celebrate it. But if I laid out before God and I said, God, there's this opportunity before me, I want to thank you by faith that you're going to provide that for me. I'm believing in you for that. And God provides that. Is the joy not more exciting? The psalmist says in Psalm 100, verse 4 to 5, enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to God and praise his name. Psalm 50, verse 23, but thanksgiving is a sacrifice that truly honors me. If you keep in my path, I will reveal to you the salvation of God. Listen, if there is one clear direction in the scriptures for God's will for your life, it is to be thankful. This whole series has been about doing something, right? All right, doing something about your life. And not just dreaming dreams, but actually doing something about it. So here's what I want to do as we end tonight's message. I want to interview someone who I think has been doing this. This person, I think, has really been an example of what it means. Kristen, can we go to the main slide? Of what it means to seriously just do something. She not just dreamed about her dreams and her desires, she did something about it. And so I want to spend some time interviewing her. So would you please welcome Stephanie as she comes on up, Stephanie Carpio, as she comes on up to join us for this. So Stephanie, I'm going to ask you, obviously I know where we're going with this discussion. So let me ask you a few questions. Number one, what has been your dream, right? This whole series is about do something about your dreams. What's been your dream? What is it you've been desiring and looking for God to do?
Well, ever since my senior year in high school, this girl came to our school and she just talked to our class. She went to Africa. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, Maggie Doyne, I think her last name is. And she went over there and she built a school for a whole bunch of these kids who, have never had the opportunity to go to school, and some of them don't even have parents living anymore. And just her being there really impacted me, and seeing how courageous she was to just go straight out of high school and go after her dreams really inspired me. And but in a different way, she went separately. She didn't really do it, as a missionary. She did it just out of love for the kids. And so I thought, I have faith and I have a God, and these kids, they have a need, but they also need my God. I have a God that's greater, and I need to share that with them. So I guess my dream, you could say, is to be a missionary. Okay. And that's my
And how long has this been?
Dream.
How long has it been? A dream?
Senior year in high school.
Senior year in high school. Okay, so you've had this dream to want to be a missionary in Africa for a long time. How did you go? So I think we will all agree, all of us have our desires and dreams, right? Okay, so what are some ways you went about it that you look back on and are like, oh, that wasn't smart? Or things that, how did you approach it at first that really didn't work?
Well, I did just the dreaming. I did the whole social media thing where I did a board on Pinterest. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Pinterest, but it was called Missions. And I would just, repin everything that had to do with missionary, and I would just dream about it and, say, God, one day maybe, or I actually wrote down because you asked me last minute to do this interview. I also went on YouTube and just basically looked up missionary testimonies and was just in awe of these people, and I didn't really do anything about it. I just looked at them and was inspired, and I didn't do anything.
So there was kind of which is if most of us are honest, our dreams and our desires are kind of like that, isn't it? We kind of dream them, and I got a Pinterest account, and I got all kinds of plans on Pinterest of what I'm going to do someday until Jesus comes back. It'll be there, right? So let me ask you this then. How did you move from dreaming about it to just doing something about it? Let me ask it this way. Let me leave it that way.
Well, this, a couple weeks before it was announced that we were going to Africa as a church.
Yes. So Grace Church 2013 is going to Kenya. We're sending a team this summer.
Yeah. And I was talking to you about a missions trip, and then you mentioned how we might be going to Kenya before it was announced, and my heart was like overjoyed, and I was like, this is actually, like, our church is actually going to Africa. Like, this is my opportunity and my chance. And then I found out that we had to put down a down payment.
And how much was that?
It was 350. How much
what was the total?
Well,
The trip?
the total's 3,500.
Yes, and you had that in your bank account, right?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to make that clear.
I didn't even have the $300 to put down, and I honestly, I'm a college student, so I didn't have this money, and I didn't even think about fundraising till later. But so I didn't think that I was going to be able to do it, and then later on, you messaged me and was basically like, if someone were to put down $300 for your missions trip, would you do the fundraising, and would you go and really try to go on for this trip? And I said, yes, of course.
Yeah.
And my heart was just so full, and I was so thankful. And I later found out who that person was, and I'm so
Really?
thankful for that person, yeah.
It wasn't me, by the way.
No,
I like
it
her,
wasn't.
bud.
It wasn't him.
I need $300.
But so then I gave it some time, and I actually was like sitting there and was like, okay, God, I'm going to Africa. Someone
Yes.
paid for my down
Still
payment.
need $20-something $100.
Yeah, and I didn't do anything. And I literally just sat and was like, woo, I'm going to Africa. My $300 are down, but I didn't have the rest of the money.
So what did you do about it?
So I prayed. Really, I prayed and was like, okay, God, if I'm supposed to go to Africa, you'll send me to Africa. And, a couple months passed by and nothing was happening.
God didn't say
And
anything.
then, this message, and this message really inspired me. Just do something, And also, one of the leaders that are going on the trip emailed me and was basically like, Steph, you need to raise, this much money, or else you can't go on the trip. And there's a deadline May 1st. And that was like a real slap in the face, kick in the butt, get going. And so I decided to do fundraisers. I did.
So that's what you did?
Yeah, that's what I did. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, tell us what you did. What was your fundraiser? Because
yeah.
it's quite dramatic.
Yeah. I had 2 garage sales, and this was something that ties into the message tonight about praying specifically.
Yeah.
And for my first garage sale, I needed $1,700 by May 1st to definitely be going on an Africa trip. And I prayed for exactly $450 because that's what I needed for May 1st to put down my down payment. And I made $455 the first garage sale, which is incredible.
And then the garage sale, you mentioned something unique, that not only did you do your own garage sale, but you actually went out of you sent an email like, listen, if people have stuff you're trying to get rid of, bring it, I'll sell it.
Yeah,
right? So
I
that was
did
a
a Facebook page, and it's called Send Stuff to Africa. And basically, I was just like, if you want to help, I could really use your help, and donations are accepted, and on and on like that.
So you did that. So and then like last week, you raised another additional money,
Yeah.
right? So where now $3,500? How much have you raised so far?
I have raised in the past 2 weeks $2,225.81.
And here's what you probably know this, or perhaps don't know this. The church will actually cover up to 25% of your trip if you don't reach. Yeah, I guess you're finding that out
didn't
now.
know that.
So you're closer to your goal than you think. Yeah. So I mean, and say, don't cry yet. Wait till later. But I wanted to. So you're going to Africa.
Yeah.
Yes, you are going to Africa. That is worth a round of applause for her, right? Yeah. And I had Stephanie come on up here to share the story because I think she, for me, and I'm so glad that this happened in your life right now because this is what we're talking about. What's the dream that God has put on your heart? Here's something incredible. Some of the things that you have as dreams that you think this would never happen. Is there the possibility that God was the one who planted it there? And in your mind, you're just thinking, I just want to do that. And God's like, actually, I put that there, but I want you to get up and do something about it. I love the fact that, yes, you had a season of dreaming and Pinteresting it, right? And then it moved to a season of, I need stuff. I need money. You put together a Facebook page asking people for stuff. I got that, and I was like, holy cow, that's awesome. And so if you never raise anything, you're going to Africa regardless. You've already pretty much reached your goal. I mean, if you raise above, that's awesome. But I just, way to go, Stephanie. Give me a round of applause for Stephanie. You go ahead, girl. Here, I'll take the microphone. Thank you.